Hi there, everybody. Welcome to Friendly Friday. My name is Aaron Green. Today I have with me Finn. We're going to be talking about a
Hi.
lot of really awesome things. How you doing today, Finn?
Pretty fantastic. Pretty fantastic. Can't complain too loudly. Uh, it's been a bit of a weird day, but productive, so let's go with it.
That's good. That's good. Productive is always good. So, let's just dive right on into it. The first thing I usually like to talk about is your experience with being trans. How you realize that and what you're doing today versus what you were earlier. So, if you wouldn't mind, let's expand a little bit about your experience with being trans, how you came to realize that, and so forth.
Um, so I started transitioning pretty much straight out of college. I knew there was like something up gender non-conformity wise. Um, I remember going to parties in high school. Uh, Sometimes I would try to sneak wearing a dress, but also my family was really not accepting of that shit. So it was always a big thing that like if they found out, it was going to be a big problem. So like I was always limiting where I would wear stuff and like if I would ever like even just wear skirts and things. But even back then, I was kind of a shit lib at the time. Um, and I was raised with like so there's boys and there's girls, and then there's being taught that like trans people just meant that like a trans woman was just somebody who was really really gay. It was the way it was taught to be first. And I was like, well, that's I'm not sure if it's me, but I don't think okay, whatever. Uh, and then I was in high school in a band when I met somebody whose sister was both trans and a lesbian, and it was like you can be both? Wait, no, you can be both? No, I thought the one was like, but no, but that's not how any of this works. And having the slow realization that like nobody around me was all not only did they not know about this stuff, but they weren't going to be okay with it was like a very interesting experience. Went to college and kind of so I got 2 degrees in 3 years from a school with a 90% attrition rate. I basically did nothing but study for 60 hours a week, just hard pounding through intensive engineering degrees, thinking like, well, if I don't think about the pain, it's not there, right? Um, Finally getting to the end of school and kind of running off the cliff and realizing I don't have more immediate work to just sink my teeth into.
Yeah.
And like I was applying for everything that I could, but one of the things that you especially like graduated with a combination of a electrical engineering and a digital design degree, which kind of gave me the weird idea I was going to be focusing on like weirdly, originally I was working on commercials. I was leaving with the idea that I was going to be working in audio and commercials, and that got me into a whole video editing career. And while I was working at HBO, uh, and like doing some like weird video editing stuff, they were a lot more accepting about gender shit. They did not give two fucks about professionalism if you could do the work and if you could save them money while you were doing it by just doing all of it and doing all of it professionally. And because of that, I got a reputation as kind of a just go to them, they'll fix it for you. But also like I could transition at this point, and on the one hand, I was really excited about this, but I literally had my ex-wife tell me, "Yeah, if you're non-binary, I don't think I'm gonna love you anymore." Um, so my brain being kind of complicated, and I grew up in a not great household, so I kind of had abandonment shit already. So my brain was like, well, all right, I guess I'm gonna hard transition then, and being a trans woman means taking a pile of hormones, right? Um, Brain really did not react well to that. I am currently not on hormones, and I think that's actually probably the healthiest choice for me. Because like I was on hormones and started transitioning, and then So I presented as a trans woman. It would help if I could use the English language. I presented as a trans woman for 6, 7 years, just straight up she, her,
Mm-hmm.
femme, hard on femme side. I am a woman. Um, I was assaulted when I was in med school because my life's fucking weird and been all over the place. Um, at the time, this is a thing I frequently don't cop to as much. So I was an EMT, and I was kind of raised with kind of shit lib. I'd seen Obama actually lead to an expansion of queer rights, and I had this like, okay, well, maybe at the time I was thinking, originally I was going to be I was leaving thinking a ER surgeon would be awesome, but at the same time there was a police precinct near me where they were like, we hire people straight out of med school. We need people straight out of med school that can testify and also be officers on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I started getting courted there. I started getting interested in some tactical stuff. I'd always been interested in guns because violent clockwork was fascinating to me. The idea
Mm-hmm.
of just this like mechanism that, if you slow it down, is doing these very fascinating mechanical steps
Mm-hmm.
that make it seem like it's doing near magic, but in reality it's just a bit of science stacked on top of each other. Um, and when I was at med school, I was assaulted. Uh, I went to report it to the campus police. The campus police saw my ID, had me listed as male, and said, "Well, you're dressed like a woman. You should have expected that." So I left, and I went to report it, and got a call from the chief that I was of the precinct where I had been looking at, saying, "Hey, you've been doing all these classes, like not only just like med school stuff, but I've been doing additional specific like police training courses and shit."
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was like, "Yeah, you realize if you file this complaint, we can't hire you, right? Because we can't have officers on hand who are going to be filing these types of complaints against each other. So if you're going to be filing this, it's probably going to impact our ability to hire you at all." And I had this like world destroying, oh fuck, okay, so just rewriting and a very, coming from I had been raised by a lawyer and a rather vicious alcoholic, so I'd had to call the cops once or twice. Once on my, at
Mm-hmm.
least twice on my mom that I can think of, where one time she was suicidal, one time she was just drunk and throwing bottles, and it got really bad, and then she like locked the door and was screaming some shit that was like, she ended up going to the hospital for that. But both times
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid. I didn't know what the fuck to do. 911 was how you're taught, like you respond to these emergencies. And both times the cops came and I was privileged and white, so my experience with the police had been rather tainted because of that. I was a kid who they were looking out for. And seeing right up close, both having that experience, and then in 2013, I got picked up by the NYPD because I was a trans woman in New York, and until 2019, being trans in New York was considered evidence of solicitation. Um, yeah. So the good news is, like I said, my dad's a lawyer. He was a defense attorney in New York, and
Mm-hmm.
most people aren't that privileged, but having a defense attorney notoriously capable for taking on large parties show up and yell at the police for the missteps of what had happened, we left the police precinct, it had got dropped, and we never talked about it again. Like, that is not the experience of most folks who have walking
Yeah.
while trans charges. Like,
Right.
um, but my experience at that point was like, okay, so this is a kind of fucked system. Clearly, we need to like try and fix it from the inside. And then seeing that, like, no, it's rotted, like pretty much, like there's huge parts of it that are so broken that you're not going to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that largely kind of radicalized me into like a very radical queer, and I started realizing that, and having divorce kind of made me realize, oh, maybe I don't need to pick my transition goals based on what other people want. Maybe I don't need to pick transition goals based off of what any standard says is required. I don't need to pick transition goals based off of what anybody else's body is set up for. I don't need to pick transition goals based off of any medical requirement. There
Yep.
is just no especially realizing that like having a gender that isn't cleanly in either category or having bits of your gender fit into opposing categories isn't inherently bad. It's just more of who you are. And the point of transitioning should be to be more of you, not to be like an idealized version of somebody else.
That's right. I totally agree with that. The point of transition and coming out as trans, or as more people might identify with it, not cis, right?
Yeah,
The point of that is to become comfortable with oneself and to be honest with oneself. Um, and in unfortunately, I think a lot of cases, we find that social pressures or one thing or family pressures or one thing or the other, right, will impede that process. Will cause people to decide to not transition or detransition. Um, People who want to rather have things just be easier, not deal with that level of not deal with that level of emotional effort that comes with transitioning. And I would say, that's just as valid. If you want to detransition or not transition at all because you find that, your family situation would be a little bit more acclimating in that regard, absolutely. When you get a point to where you feel comfortable in your life, that you can be more honest with yourself, we will gladly accept you. That's the whole point of the trans community, I think,
right.
is to show that level of acceptance for folks, especially those who can't right away do what they want with their gender or their hormones or their body, because so many of us have been there before. Um, so I really appreciate you sharing your experience here with us. That's absolutely, just as I said, valid as anyone else's. And it certainly means a lot that you'd open up and share your experience here with us. So thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. I feel like it's important to share in this context. Because if I had known when I'd started transitioning that the focus should have been to ignore other, I almost feel like you have to ignore the way other people are transitioning while you're transitioning.
Yep,
It
exactly.
it's so it's super easy to get caught up in like, oh, they look beautiful
Mm-hmm.
doing that. Why am I not doing that? Or what like am I failed because I can't do the level of either femininity or style of makeup or
Right.
like achieve any particular look. Um, it
Mm-hmm.
I feel like transitioning has to be about being who you are rather than
Right.
seeing somebody else and yeah.
Exactly right. I think the whole point of transition should be more to become more comfortable with oneself rather than to um, to meet a certain uh, goal that has been imposed by one community or the other, or a big content creator or something like that. There are a lot of
Yeah.
really, really beautiful trans people, and it's very easy for a lot of people to compare themselves to these trans people. And it's unfortunate because I find that a lot of it is rooted in insecurity.
Mhm.
And I wish I wish a lot of us were more secure with our bodies and how we looked, but it's due to the nature of being trans, I think that's why that exists. That's why that insecurity is there. And The fact that we don't fit into that gender binary, the fact that we don't fit into that societal expectation of people. For a lot of people, it feels like pretending almost. It feels like when you're training your voice and when you're putting on makeup and learning tutorials and stuff, it feels like you're cosplaying, that you're learning a skill to be an actor. And that makes me really sad because that's not how cis women feel when they grow up
Right.
as girls. That's not how they feel when they learn these things from their mom or their sisters or whatever other female figure they have in their life. They don't feel like it's learning a role. They feel this is something women do. And I think
Right.
trans people, especially trans femmes, struggle with this a lot because trans femmes are subject to a lot of discrimination and hate, especially online. Trans masc people, unfortunately, aren't as prominent online. I'm always
Mm.
looking, by the way, for more trans masc people. If you're trans masc, please hit me up. I'm always looking for trans masc people to talk to. But yeah, no, I feel that a lot of it is rooted in this like societal expectation of what a femme should look like and the role that a femme should play. And I think a lot of trans people are really too hard on themselves. A lot of trans femmes are really too hard on themselves for the degree in which they fit that role.
Mm.
And they shouldn't be because it should be a different role. It shouldn't be that, women, quote unquote, are seen in this role, but rather a certain type of person. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
I think there are certain relationship dynamics that will always exist. I think there will always be like someone who is more dominant and someone who is more submissive in a relationship. And I think typically that is how people connect. And then that is how people form relationships. But I think for the most part, it's independent of gender. And I wish that a lot more of us identified that and were able to make that separation. Because I don't think a lot of society is. I don't think a lot of society can make that separation there.
I understand why people would want to like I'm not a gender abolitionist.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand why like personally I happen to be somewhere more non-binary, somewhere kind of outside of that, but that's because it's a very much a personal thing. I feel like there's a there's a lot of catchy lines and tactics as a way of communicating things efficiently, and there's one that I'm going to steal here. All tactics are personal. All gender is personal. Like there are trans women who are like hard women who are absolutely women. They're not less women for being trans. I
Mm-hmm.
think it. I think there is a lot of bullshit hung up around gender, but I don't think that inherently makes all gender bad. It just makes something that you need to filter more.
Right. I agree. I totally agree. Um, I think it's something that ultimately our understanding as a society, as a human society, will expand over time.
Mm,
And
that's
I'm
certainly true.
really excited to see where that goes here in the next 5, 10, 15 years because the degree at which we've seen acceptance for gay people in my lifetime has been very, very rapid.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously.
even,
I'm in New Hampshire. I have non-binary on my fucking license now. Uh,
oh, nice.
like, uh, as I am a massive gun nerd, so of course I'm going to bring this up. FFLs require a background check every time you get a gun, and non-binary has finally been added to the federal list of gender options for that, so you don't have to misgender yourself every time you
Nice.
run that application. Uh,
That's awesome.
uh,
That's very
yeah,
good progress. Well,
right? Like, it's a thing.
that's a very good segue actually. I'd like to get a little bit into your hobbies and your interests. I know that
Mm.
your handle is Queer Armorer, is that right?
Yes. My handle is Queer Armor. I am somebody who does a lot of I make YouTube videos to try and make a lot of accessible content that is
Hmm.
queer friendly, that is about tactics and arming yourself. Um the I feel like there is a very big need in our community to be arming ourselves, to be ready for, frankly, hate is the shit on our collective Velcro. That's not going to get off anytime soon
Hmm.
unless we are scrubbing. And that scrubbing is going to involve sometimes being ready to fight against lethal threats with lethal force. Anybody telling you you can match lethal threats with non-lethal force hasn't faced enough lethal threats in their life to have an opinion.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's just not an option. The reason why people say, well, then calling 911, that's literally having the help carry your guns for you.
Hmm.
And plenty of queer folk can't trust the cops. We've just been talking about how until 2019, being trans was considered evidence of solicitation. You're not going to call the police and have them arrest you because you wanted to exist safely in your home.
Yeah.
And Stonewall was an anti-police riot. Many queer people remember vividly that police are frequently not going to be on our side. So we need
Hmm.
to protect ourselves. I run a chapter of Pink Pistols in New Hampshire, which is a group that allows queer folk to come together and train together. Um, I think a lot of the problems and half the reason why I created my channel come from there being a lot of really great information on firearms and tactics from a lot of kind of problematic and some occasionally shitty sources. Um, I feel like it's like there was a joke that I was mentioning to you before about how you can kind of make uh, gender comparisons between the hybrid AR AK weapons and kind of joke about which ones count as which. But it is so frequently done in a hateful context that I feel like I need to like include so many qualifiers and asterisks and
Hmm.
just addendums to everything that I'm about to say because
Right.
I need to make sure, like, I have literally heard somebody use the joke my AR identifies as a bolt action rifle, which is like it's an offensive meme that's supposed to be like, for one, I want to build a bolt action AR. I want to build a bolt action AR because fuck you internet. But also I've heard a parent literally explain to their child that they weren't going to explain their transition, they weren't going to accept their transition because they couldn't be a woman anymore than that. Well, then the fucking AR can be a hunting rifle. One, yes, ARs are used as hunting rifles. That's a whole other conversation. But two, I think guns are a thing the queer community needs, and unfortunately, a lot of the content around it is, well, shitty to us. There's some places I can point to that are like either one, I'm not the only queer creative who's doing this. Tactical Girlfriend is a trans operator who creates some fantastic content going over basically everything you would need from like a shit hits the fan, like hard AR stuff, like patrolling with people, communications gear, actual like what you think of as operator stuff.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of people who are there's the entire organizations like the Socialist Rifle Association
Hmm.
that are doing really good like community outreach and community organization that are helping because, like, for example, the assault weapons ban happened because the assault weapons ban in California partially happened because the Black Panthers were arming themselves. You know
Right.
this because the M1 got added to it despite not actually being a reasonable assault weapon. It's actually a great home defense tool,
Hmm.
but the Black Panthers were using it, and because they were using it, it got added. Um, it's important for communities that are going to be trying to advocate for change, or importantly, they just want to be able to exist safely outside of needing state protection and state worship, to be able to defend themselves, to be able to protect each other. It's like I say at the end of each video, stay dangerous and keep each other safe.
Right. I think that's absolutely important. And what you made, your point that you made earlier about a lot of this content being inaccessible to trans people or queer people in general, I think that's very true. Unfortunately, I see that is the case for a lot of this defense content that I would otherwise benefit from.
Yeah.
Self defense and home defense and stuff like that, firearms, like learning how to actually use your weapon and what a weapon is. A lot of it is made by creators who openly promote, transphobic, queerphobic, homophobic content on their Twitter pages or otherwise on their YouTubes, and it's really unfortunate. So that's why I appreciate content creators such as yourself and others that you've mentioned, because you allow for a space for people like us who would otherwise be interested in that content to participate in that and to get the information that we need and the knowledge that we need to continue. Because we really do need to protect each other and protect ourselves. And I think a lot of this is kind of, not necessarily paywalled, but in a similar sense, that like you have to pay with your emotional effort, you have to pay with your energy by participating in this, reading this person's content or actively engaging with this openly transphobic person. That's not something that you actually have to pay for, but it is a cost. It's something that you feel and it's something that resonates with you. So yeah, it's certainly something that I appreciate from content creators such as yourself.
I have a person who I follow that my partner has described watching their videos as emotional roulette. Because on the one hand, they make great content. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't. I've hated that they shit on me and mine, and I still come back to watch their videos because they make good content in the space. But at the same time, watching their videos can frequently feel like emotional roulette because it's, oh, are you going to shit on me and mine today? Yes or no? Let's spin the wheel. And just, I I think if this can, I don't know. I've I've had very mixed reactions from people in the gun space. I've had some people who have seen what I've been doing and been really understanding and accepting and loving of it, and were like, "Oh yes, we need more of that. I totally get what you're doing." Um, I've also had some places and communities and other people that try and highlight themselves as liberal or libertarian and
Hmm.
free thinking and about anybody can do whatever they want. But the second queer folk try to just exist normally in their spaces, they get upset. The second queer folk try and exist the same way that they exist in their
Yeah.
spaces, they get upset. And they don't just accept scraps.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a struggle because a lot of these spaces, they could be a lot more fruitful, with
Yeah,
different experiences it comes different knowledge. And that's why I try to remain open even to people whose experiences or knowledge I might otherwise find resistant, especially these the same people we're talking about, the problematic people that make this content that's important for me to consume. Like, I try to remain open to their experiences and try to see things from their perspective and try to empathize with them, but sometimes it can be incredibly hard when a certain space is resisting you so much that there's only so much you can do before you realize I can't participate in this space. It's not for me. And then you either make your own space or you find one that is. And
right.
yeah, no, I think a lot of really valuable knowledge for queer people, especially trans people, is lost in this kind of wanting to build barriers to protect yourself. If if a lot of these content creators were a little bit more sensitive to their audience and a little bit, excuse me, more understanding about the different types of people that could consume and benefit from their content, I think they would benefit. They would see their numbers increase significantly. And B, I think us as queer people and trans people would benefit as well, because it wouldn't be a contentious space for us to engage in this. It would be something where we feel welcome. And I think that's
Right.
super important. It's super important for us to have that outlet for us.
I mean, there's something to be said for, I think a lot of times, unfortunately, there's more outreach that needs to be done. Because I think part of
Mm-hmm.
the reason why a lot of these channels are comfortable making this content is their viewers consume it.
Mm-hmm.
It does numbers. It generates value for them, and to them, they're not seeing, one, it would take work to replace this because it would require actual thought on their part, and
Mm-hmm.
two, they are already seeing this content is making numbers for them. So I think it's important for us to start existing in these spaces, because
Mm-hmm.
I think frequently in a lot of like gun spaces, for example, there isn't a lot of pushback when stuff happens. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, there's an expected pushback in the other direction, and that's just normalized. There aren't a lot of queer gun folk right now. It is starting
Mm-hmm.
to change, but it's just starting to change, and it's a thing that will get better the more queer folk that are engaging in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do feel like quick shout out to anybody who is currently watching this. I highly recommend um, for like the Tactical Girlfriend, but also Deviant Olam does like techie information, and Paul Harrell is the best source for like um, Paul Harrell as well as Forgotten Weapons are good for like genuinely understanding and not ever punching down content.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they're so rare, and like unfortunately a lot of the stuff that I can easily point to, like Grand Thumb or the AK guy or any of these people where like you make good content, why do you have to casually shit on queer people in addition to your good
Mm-hmm.
content?
Right. Yeah, it makes it hard to participate in that, but I'm glad that there are creators filling that role, even cis creators that identify that, maybe this isn't necessarily the most expedient kind of dialogue for me to have. So, certainly good to see that. If you want to send me some links, I will definitely include those channels in the links below.
Definitely
Also,
will do.
yeah, be sure to send me any links that you have. I will be sure to
Oh yeah.
include those first. And then below that will be other channels that you recommend. And then below that, my links. So, yeah,
Cool.
we'll have a whole list of links for people to check out. Do make sure you click down there. Um, One last thing I want to ask you here before we wrap up. I know you've got to go here soon. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Any like fun topics or anything else you had on your mind that you might want to bring up?
I got a bit of a weird one because it's a thing that is hard to explain outside of the very specific niche of queer gun circles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to start off with the bit of a teaser, I am currently building a femboy rifle. Um,
Femboy
so
rifle, huh?
yeah, so I have this whole theory about so it like we were talking about how problematic creators can like be making jokes that like there would be good content there if you would just be thinking a bit more about like not shitting on your audience. There's a joke about AR rifles are one of the more common platforms, and they're kind of the Western platform. And AK platform is the Eastern Russian. It's
Mm-hmm.
the Kalashnikov. It's what you see most terrorists using in most movies. It is the general. Arguably, it's the arm of the free world. There's multiple countries that have put it on their flag. Um, like it has fought rebellions. It is anyway. The AR is known for being more finicky and being more It's the one everybody builds stuff for because it's the American one. So it's the one that there's all of the like custom versions and parts and shit for, but arguably the AK is the one that can take more pain and can like reliably continue working. So I would like to picture it as AR is like the toxic man, and the AK is like the woman that actually gets the work done. And then you can kind of joke about how if like there's versions of like things that grab both or started from one and changed into the other, and that is actually one rifle transitioning and identifying as another rifle, arguably. So the CMMG Mutant is a AR upper that takes it uses AK ammunition, but specifically also uses all of the AK internal parts. Meaning it's not just. I like to think that is a non-binary trans woman rifle, because that is somebody who is transitioned medically, but also realized they didn't want to do the full transition in terms of like they want to end up as non-binary, are comfortable being the unique rifle that they are. I am building what's called a side charging AR, which is an AR in every way except it vaguely looks like an AK.
So it's a femboy rifle.
Right, exactly.
I love that. I love that so much. Oh my god.
Thank you. I'm glad people are getting this. So it's an AR in the sense that like all of the parts of it are AR, except it uses the AK is so if you there's a joke video of like a Russian operator goes to pull the side of an AR and everybody looks at him like, or like somebody who's pretending to be an American operator but is clearly Russian goes to pull the side because they're used to the AK thing, and everybody just looks at them like sus. And so this is an AR, but it's an AR, but it uses the AK's side charging instead of the rear bit, which the useful bit for people who are shooting is it means you can move the optic back a bit, and it means that you can stay on target if you have a problem. You can you just reach underneath the rifle instead of like breaking it and going to grab the thing on the back.
Right.
But it also means that it's an AR that is trying to look like an AK, so it's the femboy of rifles.
I love that.
There is the SIG 556, which is the trans man of rifles, where it is an AK that took all of the AR's good parts, still doesn't like the surgical option, so it's an AR's impingement, but uses, or an AK's gas impingement, but uses an AR's furniture, uses an AR's round. It's shot in 5.56, and anybody who looks at that goes, "Oh, it's an AR," because it just straight up looks like an AR, but it's an AR, but better because you can also fold the stock and it's more accurate. So it's like maybe this is slightly transphobic, but I feel like trans men exist on a spectrum of oppression and have a tendency to be less shitty than cis men. So it's like, no, it's cis men but better is like SIG 5.56.
Yeah, right. That's
like it is
really
amazing. Like, it uses AR magazines. Anybody who walks up to it and tries to like operate it, it does the normal AR stuff. It is just better though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I totally get that. I love that metaphor. I love all the trans guns, honestly.
Like, and even the thing I was saying before about like the AR that identifies as a bolt, there is a company that makes these really awesome AR bolt action uppers. Like your AR can be a bolt action rifle now. I want to build one so bad.
Nice. Well, so I think it's about time for you to head out. Is that right? You have a...
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to go pick up my partner in like 3 minutes. So,
well, that's okay. Well, I do appreciate you coming out. Always keep in mind that there's always another spot here for you if you find yourself wanting to have another conversation. We'll always... Yeah, have a space for you here. I do thank you for being a part of Trans in the AM. I appreciate you sharing your trans experience with everybody and your hobbies with everybody. I think it's important to get that information out and for other people to empathize with that. So thank you for that.
I think so too. I'm glad you understand it.
Of course. Well, I thank you all for coming out for Friendly Friday. Have a good weekend. If you would, please leave a like and a comment if you liked the video. Help support the channel. And as always, take care and stay unique, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.